Introduction to Great Expectations. Great Expectations is a famous novel written by Charles Dickens, one of the greatest English writers. It was first published in parts between 1860 and 1861 during the Victorian era, a time when England was full of rich people and poor people, with big differences between them. The story is about a boy named Pip, who grows up poor but dreams of becoming rich and important. Through his life we see themes like ambition, love, guilt, and the problems of social class. The novel is told by Pip himself, looking back at his life. It shows how he changes from a young boy into a man, learning hard lessons about life, money, and relationships. Pip's early life, chapters 1-9. The novel Great Expectations begins with a boy named Pip, who is an orphan living in Narration, a small village near the marshes. Pip has never known his parents because they died when he was very young. He lives with his older sister, Mrs. Joe Gargery, and her husband, Joe Gargery, who is a blacksmith. Mrs. Joe is strict and often scolds Pip for no reason. She likes to remind him that she has raised him by hand, which means she has worked hard to take care of him. Despite her harshness, Pip loves her because she is family. On the other hand, Joe is kind and gentle. He treats Pip like a younger brother, rather than just a nephew. Joe becomes Pip's best friend and protector during these early years. One cold, dark day, Pip visits the graveyard where his parents are buried. He feels lonely as he looks at their tombstones, wondering what they were like. As he stands there, lost in thought, he suddenly hears a terrifying voice. A dirty, starving man jumps out from behind the gravestones. This man is an escaped convict named Magwitch. Magwitch looks wild and dangerous. His clothes are torn and he has chains around his legs, showing that he ran away from prison. Magwitch grabs Pip and demands food and tools to remove the chains. He threatens to kill Pip if he doesn't bring what he needs. Terrified, Pip agrees to help. That night, Pip sneaks into the pantry and steals some bread, cheese, and a meat pie. He also takes a file from Joe's workshop so Magwitch can cut through his chains. The next morning, Pip secretly delivers the items to Magwitch in the marshes. Even though Pip is scared, he feels sorry for Magwitch because he seems desperate and alone. A few days later, soldiers capture Magwitch along with another convict. Before being taken back to prison, Magwitch quietly thanks Pip for helping him. Though Pip doesn't realize it yet, this meeting will change his life forever. Not long after this incident, something exciting happens to Pip. He receives an invitation to visit a strange house called Satis House, owned by a wealthy but mysterious woman named Miss Havisham. Satis House is a large, decaying mansion filled with cobwebs and dust. It looks as though time has stopped inside. Miss Havisham herself is equally unusual. She wears an old, yellowed wedding dress and lives surrounded by clocks that are all frozen at the same time. Years ago, Miss Havisham was left at the altar on her wedding day. Since then, she has refused to move forward with her life. She spends her days sitting in one room, staring at a rotting wedding cake and holding on to her anger and sadness. During his visit, Pip meets another person living at Satis House, a young girl named Estella. Estella is beautiful, elegant, and proud. However, she is also cold and cruel, especially toward Pip. She mocks him for being poor and calls him common. Despite this, Pip falls in love with Estella instantly. Her beauty and confidence captivate him, even though she treats him badly. Miss Havisham encourages Estella to break men's hearts, using her charm and beauty to make them suffer. Pip doesn't understand why Miss Havisham wants Estella to act this way, but he feels powerless against his feelings for her. Every time Estella insults him, Pip feels hurt and ashamed of himself. As the weeks pass, Pip continues visiting Satis' house regularly. Each visit makes him more determined to become rich and important, so that Estella will notice him and stop treating him poorly. These early experiences shape Pip's dreams and ambitions. They plant the seeds of his desire to rise above his humble beginnings and escape the life of poverty he shares with Joe. Living with Joe and Mrs. Joe shapes Pip's character in many ways. Joe is a simple man who works hard as a blacksmith. He loves Pip unconditionally and teaches him valuable lessons about kindness and honesty. For example, Joe tells Pip that it's better to be honest and poor than dishonest and rich. Pip admires Joe's goodness, even though he sometimes feels embarrassed by Joe's lack of education and refinement. Mrs. Joe, on the other hand, is harsh and impatient. She constantly reminds Pip how much she has sacrificed to raise him. She beats him with a stick called the tickler whenever she thinks he has misbehaved. Despite her cruelty, Pip knows that she works hard to keep the household running. He feels a mix of fear and gratitude toward her. Pip's relationship with Joe is particularly important. Joe is not just a father figure, he is Pip's closest friend. When Pip feels sad or confused, he turns to Joe for comfort. Joe listens patiently and offers advice in his quiet, thoughtful way. For instance, when Pip worries about Estella mocking him, Joe reassures him that true worth comes from within, not from appearances or wealth. Life in the village is simple, but full of challenges. Pip often helps Joe in the forge, learning the basics of blacksmithing. While he enjoys spending time with Joe, he dreams of leaving the forge behind and becoming something greater. He imagines himself as a wealthy gentleman, living in a grand house and wearing fine clothes. These dreams are fueled by his visits to Satis' house and his growing obsession with Estella. At the same time, Pip struggles with guilt over helping Magwitch. He knows that stealing food and tools was wrong, but he couldn't ignore the convict's plea for help. This inner conflict foreshadows the moral dilemmas Pip will face later in the story. Will he choose kindness and loyalty, or will he prioritize personal gain and ambition? Pip's childhood is marked by contrasts. On one hand, he has the warmth and stability provided by Joe. On the other hand, he faces the harshness of Mrs. Joe and the cruelty of Estella. These opposing forces shape his understanding of the world and influence the choices he makes as he grows older. The marshes surrounding Pip's village play a significant role in his early life. They are vast, desolate, and often shrouded in mist. To Pip, the marshes represent mystery and danger. It is here that he first encounters Magwitch, setting off a chain of events that will define his future. The marshes also symbolize Pip's own uncertainty about his place in the world. Like the shifting tides, Pip's identity and aspirations are constantly changing. As Pip grows older, he becomes increasingly aware of the differences between rich and poor. At Satis' house, he sees the luxury and elegance of Miss Havisham's world. In contrast, his own home is modest and plain. This awareness fuels his desire to improve himself and climb the social ladder. He believes that becoming a gentleman will bring him happiness and win Estella's love. However, Pip's journey is not just about material success. It is also about self-discovery and growth. Through his interactions with characters like Joe, Magwitch, and Estella, Pip learns important lessons about love, loyalty, and morality. These lessons prepare him for the challenges he will face in the next phase of his life. Little does Pip know, his quiet existence is about to change dramatically. Soon, he will face challenges and surprises that will test his character and force him to grow up quickly. What lies ahead for Pip is both thrilling and heartbreaking, a journey full of twists and turns that will lead him far from home and back again. Pip's Great Expectations, chapters 10 to 20. Pip's life takes a dramatic turn as he grows older, and his dreams of becoming a gentleman become stronger than ever. After spending years working as an apprentice in Joe's blacksmith shop, Pip begins to feel trapped. The work is hard, dirty, and exhausting, and every day reminds him of the life he desperately wants to leave behind. He hates being a blacksmith, because it represents everything he dislikes about his current situation: poverty, simplicity, and lack of opportunity. All Pip can think about is escaping to a better life where he will be respected, admired, and worthy of Estella's love. Every time Pip visits Sada's house, his feelings for Estella grow deeper, even though she continues to treat him cruelly. She mocks him for his rough hands, his plain clothes, and his humble background. Estella's insults cut deep, but instead of discouraging Pip, they only fuel his determination to change his life. He believes that if he becomes rich and refined, Estella will finally see him as her equal. This dream keeps him going, even when he feels stuck in the forge with Joe. Despite his unhappiness, Pip remains close to Joe during these years. Joe is patient and supportive, never pressuring Pip to stay or criticizing his ambitions. However, Pip begins to feel increasingly distant from Joe. He starts to see Joe's kindness and simplicity as weaknesses rather than strengths. Pip worries that people like Estella and Miss Havisham would look down on him if they knew he was still tied to such a modest life. These thoughts make Pip uncomfortable, and he begins to imagine a future far away from the village and the forge. One day, something extraordinary happens that changes Pip's life forever. A lawyer named Mr. Jaggers arrives in the village with shocking news. Mr. Jaggers tells Pip that he has been chosen to receive a large fortune from a secret benefactor. The benefactor wishes to remain anonymous, but has arranged for Pip to move to London and live as a gentleman. Pip is overwhelmed with excitement and disbelief. He immediately assumes that the mysterious benefactor is Miss Havisham, who must want to help him win Estella's heart. This belief makes perfect sense to Pip. After all, Miss Havisham invited him to Sada's house many times and allowed him to spend time with Estella. Surely this act of generosity is part of her plan to prepare Pip for marriage to Estella. With this idea firmly planted in his mind, Pip begins to dream even bigger. He imagines himself transformed into a wealthy, elegant man who will finally earn Estella's respect and affection. Before leaving for London, Pip says goodbye to Joe and Mrs. Joe. Joe is happy for Pip and proud of his success, but he also seems sad at the thought of losing him. Joe gives Pip some heartfelt advice, reminding him to stay true to himself no matter how much his life changes. Pip listens politely but doesn't fully appreciate Joe's words at the time. Instead, he feels impatient to start his new life. When Pip arrives in London, he is both excited and nervous. The city is vast, noisy, and full of people dressed in fine clothes. Everything feels so different from the quiet village where he grew up. Pip quickly learns that becoming a gentleman involves more than just having money. He must learn proper manners, speak elegantly, and behave in ways that fit his new social status. To help him adjust, Mr. Jaggers arranges for Pip to live with a young man named Herbert Pocket, who teaches him the rules of polite society. At first, Pip struggles to adapt to his new lifestyle. He finds it difficult to navigate the complexities of high society, especially since he has no experience with wealth or privilege. For example, he accidentally insults a tailor by refusing to pay for a suit until it fits perfectly, not realizing that tipping is expected. Another time, he embarrasses himself at a dinner party by using the wrong fork. Despite these mistakes, Herbert is kind and patient, guiding Pip through the challenges of becoming a gentleman. As Pip settles into his new life, he begins to change in ways he doesn't fully understand. At first, he is thrilled by the freedom and opportunities his wealth brings. He buys expensive clothes, eats at fancy restaurants, and attends parties with other wealthy young men. However, over time, Pip starts to lose touch with the values he once held dear. He becomes careless with money, spending it recklessly without thinking about the consequences. He also begins to look down on his old friends and family, especially Joe. Pip feels deeply ashamed of his poor background and tries to hide it from his new acquaintances. Whenever someone asks about his past, he lies or changes the subject. He worries that people will judge him if they know he came from a humble village and worked as a blacksmith. This shame extends to his relationship with Joe. When Joe visits Pip in London, Pip feels embarrassed by Joe's awkwardness and lack of refinement. He treats Joe coldly, making excuses to avoid spending too much time with him. Joe, however, remains kind and forgiving. He understands that Pip is caught up in his new life and doesn't hold his behavior against him. Before leaving, Joe reminds Pip that true friendship and loyalty are more important than wealth or status. Pip nods politely but doesn't truly hear Joe's message. Deep down, he is too focused on proving himself as a gentleman to appreciate the wisdom of Joe's words. As the months pass, Pip becomes increasingly obsessed with winning Estella's love. He writes letters to Miss Havisham, thanking her for her generosity and hinting that he hopes to marry Estella someday. In return, Miss Havisham sends vague responses that encourage Pip to keep dreaming. Pip interprets these messages as confirmation that his assumptions are correct. He believes that Miss Havisham is grooming him to become Estella's husband, and this belief gives him hope. However, reality soon begins to intrude on Pip's fantasies. During one visit to Satis House, Pip notices that Estella has grown even more beautiful and even colder. She flirts with other men right in front of Pip, making it clear that she has no intention of returning his affection. Estella admits to Pip that she cannot love anyone because Miss Havisham raised her to break men's hearts. Despite this admission, Pip refuses to give up. He convinces himself that Estella will eventually soften toward him once he proves himself worthy of her. Meanwhile, Pip's financial habits spiral out of control. He spends money faster than it comes in, racking up debts and borrowing from friends. He knows he should be more responsible, but he can't resist the temptations of his new life. Every purchase and every outing feels like another step closer to becoming the man he wants to be. Despite his outward confidence, Pip feels uneasy inside. He misses the simplicity of his old life and the warmth of Joe's companionship. Yet, he pushes these feelings aside, telling himself that he has moved beyond such things. He clings to the belief that his sacrifices will pay off in the end, leading him to happiness and fulfillment. Little does Pip realize his journey is far from over. The truth about his mysterious benefactor is about to come crashing down, shattering his illusions and forcing him to confront the mistakes he has made. As Pip continues to chase his dreams, he remains blind to the lessons he needs to learn about humility, gratitude, and the true meaning of success. Truth about the Benefactor, chapters 21 to 35. Pip's life in London continues to unfold, filled with excitement, challenges, and growing unease. He spends his days learning how to act like a gentleman under the guidance of his new friend, Herbert Pocket. Herbert is kind, patient, and understanding, making Pip feel welcome in this strange, new world. Together they practice proper manners, discuss literature, and attend social events where Pip tries to fit in with high society. Despite his best efforts, Pip often feels out of place. The other gentlemen seem so confident and polished, while Pip still struggles to shake off the awkwardness of his humble beginnings. Herbert becomes more than just a teacher. He becomes Pip's closest friend in London. Unlike many others, Herbert doesn't judge Pip for his past or make fun of his mistakes. Instead, he offers advice and encouragement, helping Pip navigate the complexities of his new life. For example, when Pip overspends on fancy clothes and expensive dinners, Herbert gently reminds him to be careful with his money. When Pip feels homesick or unsure of himself, Herbert listens patiently and reassures him that things will get better. Through their friendship, Pip begins to feel less alone in this overwhelming city. Even as Pip adjusts to his new surroundings, his thoughts remain fixed on Estella. He visits Satis' house regularly, hoping to win her love. Each visit fills him with hope and despair at the same time. Estella is as beautiful and captivating as ever, but she also seems colder and more distant. She flirts with other men right in front of Pip, treating him like just another admirer. Despite her cruelty, Pip cannot stop loving her. He convinces himself that if he works hard enough and becomes refined enough, Estella will eventually see him as worthy of her affection. However, reality soon crashes down on Pip's dreams. One day, during a visit to Satis' house, Pip learns devastating news. Estella has agreed to marry another man. This man is not someone Pip respects. He is wealthy and arrogant, the kind of person who looks down on others. Pip is heartbroken. He had convinced himself that Miss Havisham was preparing him to marry Estella. But now it seems clear that she never intended for that to happen. Pip feels betrayed and foolish, realizing that he misinterpreted everything. The pain of losing. Estella leaves Pip feeling empty and confused. He begins to question why he has worked so hard to become a gentleman. Was it all for nothing? If Miss Havisham wasn't helping him win Estella's love, then who was behind his mysterious fortune? These questions haunt Pip, but he pushes them aside, focusing instead on surviving the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. One night, Pip receives an unexpected visitor, a man who changes everything. It is Magwitch, the convict Pip helped as a child. Magwitch reveals the shocking truth. He is Pip's secret benefactor. All the money Pip has been living on came from Magwitch, who made his fortune in Australia after escaping prison. Magwitch explains that he wanted to repay Pip for the kindness he showed him years ago in the marshes. To Magwitch, Pip represents everything he could never have, a chance at a better life. Pip is stunned and horrified by this revelation. He had always assumed that Miss Havisham was his benefactor, and now he realizes how wrong he was. The idea that his wealth comes from a criminal is unbearable to him. Pip feels guilty and ashamed, not only because of Magwitch's past, but also because helping a convict is illegal. If anyone finds out about Magwitch's presence in England, both of them could face serious consequences. To make matters worse, Magwitch is still in danger. He risked his life to return to England and see Pip succeed, knowing full well that being caught would mean imprisonment, or worse. Pip feels torn between gratitude and fear. On one hand, he knows that Magwitch saved him from poverty and gave him the means to pursue his dreams. On the other hand, he resents Magwitch for ruining his illusions of grandeur. Pip's carefully constructed image of himself as a gentleman crumbles before his eyes. Despite his conflicting emotions, Pip decides to help Magwitch. He knows it is the right thing to do, even though it scares him. With Herbert's assistance, Pip devises a plan to smuggle Magwitch out of England safely. They arrange for Magwitch to board a boat that will take him back to Australia, where he can live without fear of arrest. During this time, Pip learns more about Magwitch's past, including the fact that he is Estella's father. This discovery shocks Pip even further. He realizes that Estella was born to Magwitch and a woman named Molly, who now works as a housemaid for Mr. Jaggers. Years ago, Molly was involved in a violent crime and almost executed, but Magwitch saved her life by taking the blame. Later, Miss Havisham adopted Estella, raising her to break men's hearts as revenge for her own broken engagement. Understanding these connections makes Pip see the people around him in a new light. As Pip helps Magwitch prepare for his escape, he begins to reflect on his own life. He thinks about the choices he has made and the person he has become. He realizes that his obsession with wealth and status blinded him to the true value of relationships. He neglected Joe and Biddy, looked down on his old life, and chased after Estella despite her cruelty. Now faced with the reality of Magwitch's sacrifice, Pip starts to understand what it means to be truly grateful and compassionate. The tension builds as Pip and Herbert work tirelessly to protect Magwitch. They know that time is running out. Law enforcement agents are closing in, and Magwitch's enemies are lurking nearby. One of these enemies is Compayson, the same man who betrayed Magwitch years ago. Compayson is determined to capture Magwitch and ensure he faces justice. This threat looms over Pip, adding to his anxiety and fear. Through it all, Pip remains loyal to Magwitch, even though it puts him in danger. He stays by Magwitch's side, offering comfort and support. This experience marks a turning point for Pip. He begins to let go of his pride and selfishness, embracing the values of kindness and loyalty that Joe taught him long ago. Little does Pip know, the climax of this story is just around the corner. As Magwitch's escape plan unfolds, Pip will face one of the greatest challenges of his life. Will they succeed in getting Magwitch to safety, or will their efforts end in disaster? And how will Pip's newfound understanding of gratitude and humility shape the decisions he makes next? Danger and Sacrifice. Chapters 36-49. Pip's life takes a dramatic turn as he commits himself to helping Magwitch escape from England. Knowing the risks involved, Pip works closely with Herbert to create a careful plan. Their goal is to smuggle Magwitch onto a boat that will take him back to Australia, where he can live safely without fear of arrest. This mission becomes the central focus of Pip's life, filling his days with tension and uncertainty. Every decision they make feels like a step closer to either success or disaster. The first challenge is keeping Magwitch hidden while they prepare for the escape. Pip rents a small apartment near the river where Magwitch stays out of sight during the day. At night, Pip and Herbert visit him, bringing food and updates on their progress. Despite the danger, Pip grows closer to Magwitch during this time. He begins to see him not just as a convict, but as a person, a man who has suffered greatly, yet still cares deeply about others. Magwitch talks openly about his past, sharing stories of hardship, betrayal, and hope. These conversations help Pip understand why Magwitch risked everything to return to England. He wanted to see the gentleman Pip had become and feel proud of what he helped create. As Pip learns more about Magwitch's life, shocking revelations come to light. One of the most surprising truths is that Magwitch is Estella's father. Pip struggles to process this information, especially since it changes how he views Estella. He realizes that her coldness and cruelty were shaped by Miss Havisham, who adopted her and raised her to break men's hearts. But the story doesn't end there. Pip also discovers that Estella's mother is a woman named Molly, who works as Mr. Jagger's housemaid. Years ago, Molly was involved in a violent crime and almost faced execution. Magwitch saved her by taking responsibility for the offense, even though he wasn't entirely to blame. This act of selflessness cost Magwitch his freedom and nearly destroyed his life. Conclusion. Great Expectations is a powerful story about growing up, making mistakes, and learning important lessons about life. The main character, Pip, starts as a young boy who dreams of becoming rich and important. He thinks that having money and looking fancy will make him happy and win the love of Estella. But as Pip grows older, he learns that wealth and status do not bring true happiness. Instead, real joy comes from being kind, staying loyal to friends, and valuing what truly matters in life. Through Pip's journey, Charles Dickens shows us how ambition can sometimes blind us. Pip forgets about Joe's kindness and takes his family for granted because he wants to fit into high society. But when he loses everything, his money, his dreams, and even his health, he realizes how wrong he was. It is only when Pip humbles himself and returns to the people who truly care about him that he finds peace and fulfillment. Dickens also teaches us about redemption. Pip makes many mistakes, like treating Joe badly and being selfish with his money. But by the end of the story, he changes. He apologizes to those he hurt, works hard to rebuild his life, and learns to appreciate simple things like love and honesty. This shows us that no matter how far we stray, we can always grow and become better people. The novel reminds us that appearances are not important. People like Magwitch, though poor and rough, have big hearts and show great kindness. On the other hand, characters like Miss Havisham and Estella, though rich and beautiful, cause pain because they focus on revenge or pride. Real worth comes from inside, not from what you own or how you look. In the end, Great Expectations is a timeless story about hope, forgiveness, and second chances. It tells us that while life may be full of challenges, we can overcome them if we stay true to ourselves and cherish the people who love us. Through Pip's struggles and growth, Dickens reminds us that real happiness comes from within. It cannot be bought with money or status. And so, as we close this chapter of Pip's life, we carry with us the lessons he learned: to value kindness over wealth, to forgive others and ourselves, and to find joy in the simple, meaningful moments of life. These lessons continue to inspire readers around the world, proving that Great Expectations is much more than just a story. It is a guide to living a better, fuller life. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Pip's world. May it encourage you to reflect on your own life and discover the true treasures that matter most. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Great Expectations, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire and teach us about life. Until next time, keep exploring the power of great literature.